What is the United Nations really doing about global crisis? Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. Dide Adewale, and on this platform, we explore how economics, international relations, and global power shape the world we live in. So here we don't just follow headlines, we connect the dots between politics, money, people, and influence. Now, when we look at the world today, in our last episode, we took the Nigerian, Iran, and Venezuela as an example. Today, I am adding more nations. I am adding Ukraine, the Gaza, Sudan. Just when we look at the world today generally, the climate disorders, migration, food insecurity, you know, one question keeps coming up. What exactly is the United Nations doing about all of this? If you see on social media, people are calling on different leaders to intervene in the crisis in their country. People are asking questions. What is the United Nations doing? Is there no United Nation? So that will be delving in to understand what exactly the United Nations is doing about all of it. The United Nations was created to prevent war, protect peace, and promote cooperation. But today, many people feel the UN is silent, weak, or ineffective. So let's talk honestly about it. And here, we're not being emotional, we're not being political, but actually want to lay down realistic facts about what is actually happening to the United Nations. So what the UN is supposed to do normally, it exists to maintain international peace and security, protect human rights, support development, coordinate humanitarian aid, prevent future conflicts. In theory, the UN is the moral conscience of the world, but in reality, it is limited by politics. So you see, there is a core problem, especially the problem of power, where the biggest challenge is not just even only power, but it's that the United Nations cannot act without the approval of these powerful countries. So when we talk about power and these powerful countries, we're talking about the Security Council, especially the permanent five members. These people can block almost any decision or conclusion or agreement, the United Nations, agree or decide to do. So when conflicts involve major powers or their allies, the United Nations becomes paralyzed. So this is why the Gaza resolution stalled, Ukraine debates freeze, Syria remained unresolved, Yemen dragged on, and Sudan is still struggling, and even African conflicts receive limited attention. So it's not because the UN doesn't care or people don't work at the UN anymore, but because power controls permission. So what the UN is actually doing, what can we see? What are they actually doing, or how else are they carrying out their duties that it's not obvious to everyone, but we can still say the UN is active and working. To be fair, the UN is not doing nothing. It's actually trying its best. Well, from my own analysis, it is delivering humanitarian aid. It's constantly been doing that without fail, supporting refugees, monitoring human rights. The UN has been providing development funding. It's been coordinating climate action, supporting elections, fighting hunger and disease. But here is the problem. The UN is good at managing suffering, you know, but it is weak at stopping the suffering. So why the world feels, unprotected is just because it looks like the suffering is not going away despite the presence of the United Nations. So you see, the world feels unprotected because people don't judge institutions by reports. They judge them by results. So the UN can be saying, well, removed 2.5 million from poverty. We have aided agriculture. We're partnering with partners to make things happen in local communities. All those things are reports on paper that are not necessarily translating to sustainable developments that people can see and call results. So, and right now, wars continue regardless of all the money being spent over the years. Poverty keeps growing. Migration is rising, food prices are increasing. And due to all of this that affects the common man, trust is declining. So the UN appears distant, from everyday pain. It's like they're not there. And because of, the conflicts around, they have to prioritize where they would be. It doesn't mean that other programs and projects are not going on in their different communities where the UN is actually having impact. But like I just said, reports are different from results. People will feel your results more than the reports you publish or the one you put out there. So, what this means for Africa and Nigeria in all of this. For Africa, the UN often feels like a humanitarian partner. So, most of the time, when you think of the UN, you're not thinking of the UN as someone who will take you out of conflict. You're just thinking of aid, funding, a humanitarian partner, and not necessarily a political protector. So conflicts remain unresolved in parts of Africa, developing parts of Africa, and debt problems remain. You see, countries over the years have had debt problems that no United Nations has been able to help you from or completely solve. They can give relief, but maybe not completely solve. And there's also development gaps that continue to remain. All these continue to remain in Africa despite all the SDG goals, despite all the efforts. So, and many Africans will ask, if the UN cannot protect us from poverty, insecurity, and exploitation, then who will? Well, the reality, the UN is just a mirror of the world. Here is the honest truth. The UN is not weak because of bad intentions. The UN is weak because the world is divided. So the UN reflects global power, not global justice. So it is a table where powerful nations negotiate, not a court where justice is enforced. Having said all this, is the UN still relevant? Like, what are they now still doing? Yes, they are, but not in the way many people expect. The UN is relevant as a conversation space, a coordination platform, a humanitarian lifeline, a global memory of shared responsibility. But it is no longer the global authority many imagine it to be. So, what must change? What has to go in for things to get better? For the UN, to matter again, I think the Security Council must be reformed. Africa must have a real permanent representation, and veto power must be limited. Then development must be prioritized over politics, and human dignity must matter more than alliances. Like, I really want to emphasize that part. Human dignity must matter more than alliances. Until then, the United Nations will remain symbolic, not transformational. It will be like a global memory, not transformational. So, when you ask what is the United Nations doing about the world's problem, the honest answer is the UN is trying, but the world is not allowing it to succeed. So I would say that the United Nations was created to protect humanity. But today, humanity is asking whether the United Nations is still allowed to do so. So what do you think? Is the UN still relevant in today's world, or has it become powerless? Let me know in the comments, and please subscribe to my channel, because on this channel we don't just ask questions, we try to understand the systems behind them and how they work. That's all for today. Till I see you again next time, you take care. Bye for now.